Okay, today we're going to be talking about children's ages 7 through 11 and how they develop with their language, physical features, cognitive development, and emotional development. So the first thing we have is language development.
In language development, the children, they start developing their own opinions. They start opinionating different stuff about their different scenarios and all that good stuff.
They also start doing activities that will include creating stories out of their imagination, using the language that they have, that they've been acquiring recently to come up with a story and use some new language or new vocabulary words to come up with a different story.
They also start understanding passive voice. And passive voice in the English language, it means to not be specific whatsoever and just be in general. Like, for example, that person over there. And children at this age start understanding that concept.
Some activities to improve language development is have like article reactions and have the child read something and see what they think about it or how they feel about it, or the opposite of what the article is about or the children's book is about, just to get them to use their language more.
And also, they start to use more complex sentences at this age. Instead of just saying simple sentences like "I like the dog," they start understanding more complex sentences like "I like the dog and this and that and this and this." And at this age, they're really understanding about that.
And they also love to ask questions, like many questions. And that's also a good way to develop their language, is if they ask questions and peers or more older people will give them feedback and they'll be able to acquire more language from listening to that. They can also acquire lots of language during this stage from like listening to the radio, watching TV, and etc.
They also start having conversation with adults and children at this age. They are better able to do turn taking while having a conversation, better at eye gazing, and better at confirming the conversation and giving their own opinion and expression.
It also helps with their language development is to see the other side of an issue, so that they can go back and forth and find what the opposite is and also use opposite words, and then that leads into like metaphors and analogies and all those other things that are inside of the language that a child needs to know.
They'll also start talking with people they do not know as well. They tend to be more outgoing at this age. Not outgoing, but they tend to have more conversation at this age. They tend to talk a lot. They tend to ask a lot of questions, and they tend to come up to people and just start talking to strangers, and they're just really developing their language at this age.
Along with that, it's great to give them lots of choices to give their own decisions and to decide for themselves. And with that, I'm going to move on to examples of language development. I find it very interesting that children of this age will learn about 3,000 words a year, which ends up being about 20 words a day. And so there's lots of vocabulary, especially in the schools. If you have a child of this age, you'll notice that they come home with a lot of new vocabulary words. And that's because this is a critical age where they're learning. This is the foundation of their language for the rest of their life. And after this, it's much more difficult for them to develop their language. So learning it now is very critical.
And also at this age, they start to use contextual clues, like for example, like from teacher to teacher. Teach to teacher. They understand that, like, not only do they start learning a bunch of words at this age, but they start understanding more complex things like nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, nuances, puns, words, rhymes, all that good stuff. They also know how to make conversation and turn taking and eye gazing, like I said earlier, at this age. Next slide, we're going to be talking about motor physical development. They're improving coordination. And basically they know how to do two things at once at this age. For example, if they're playing basketball, they can be running and dribbling the ball at the same time, and they're really good at that at this age. They also enjoy working with their hands as well. They start learning how to do like arts and crafts with different type of tools. They start learning how to do different things with different tools and all that good stuff.
They're also starting to get into puberty, especially at the later stages of this age when they're about from the ages of about 8 to 11, because some girls as young as 8 years old can start developing in their chest, and some girls that young can even start getting their period, which is crazy, but it can happen. So they're like, what is happening? What's going on with my body? I don't understand what's going on. So they have lots of questions. So that adds on to like all of these categories. They're going to ask a lot of questions at this age. They're very curious. They tend to eat a lot of food. They're growing children, so they're going to be eating like crazy. You thought babies ate a lot, these kids will eat even more.
And also at this age, they start losing their baby teeth and start growing out their adult teeth. They also start to begin using cursive writing at this age as well. Instead of just writing regular handwritten words, they start using cursive writing with pens instead of crayons. Also at this age, they start showing early signs of puberty as well, like thickening of hair and darkening of hair. They start getting deeper voices. It's more noticeable in guys than females. Yeah.
They also are very ADD. I guess you could say that. They always want to be doing something. They're constantly running around. They're like, I need to do something, I need to do something. So with this age group, it's very important to have a lot of different activities just to keep them engaged and keep them doing something. And also at this age, they're learning to work in groups and in teams. Like you learn in preschool and kindergarten to share things and work with others. In this age, it's even more critical because they're working their way into middle school where they're going to have a lot of like group projects and whatnot.
Okay, next thing we're going to be talking about is examples of motor physical development. They can start doing simple chores around the house like sweeping and mopping. Now that they're able to be more coordinated at this age, they're able to have more balance, be more have more agility at this age, better at speed and at coordination. So they can do sweeping and mopping and like chores like that at the house now, and they're able to be good at it.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, they're growing children. But what's interesting is their bones are growing much faster than their muscles. So they're going to have a lot of growing pains, and it's going to be very uncomfortable for them. I remember that age, it was not that great. They also tend to have a fat layer on their waist just because it's like their baby fat that they're still kind of growing out of, and since they're eating a lot and they're growing, and their body is going to go from chubby to skinny and like all kinds of things during this age group just because of all the growth spurts. As we mentioned before, they're also still showing signs of puberty. Like there's lots of different things that are happening. They're going to ask so many different questions.
Yes. Next thing we're going to be talking about is cognitive development. They're going to start understanding that everyone thinks differently. This is very important in this age because back then they start thinking they think to themselves that everyone thinks the same way as they do, but ages 7 through 11 they start thinking, wait, hold on a moment. Like not everyone thinks the same way as I do. Everyone has different perspectives than me. And also another thing, they start beginning to know the use of money and work. They start understanding that the parents need to go to work, in order to get money, and they understand the value of money. They understand $1, that coins and all that good stuff.
They also start to understand the concept of time and numbers. They start to be able to tell time. They know what the dates are. They start understanding years, dates, months, and weeks, and how all that works together. And since in their education, they're going to be learning a lot more about numbers, and fractions, and different shapes, and all those kinds of things.
They also they start to understand the purpose of everything around them. For example, like they start understanding why the sun is there, why the beach is there, why do we have water, why do we have land, like nature stuff. I guess you can say, and they start understanding not only like the basic stuff in their lives, but also like the nature stuff as well.
Yeah. As we kind of touched on before, they also start seeing other people's points of view as they realize that not everyone likes the color purple like they do. So they start to see that, oh, well, you see that? Well, this is what I see. Like looking at a painting, they're all going to see something different. So they're also starting to understand what is socially acceptable at home and with their friends and at school, like what's private life and what's public life and what you share with different people in different settings.
Yes, and also they start understanding consequences as well. They start understanding, well, if I do this, then later on I will get grounded or something. I mean, they start understanding all that good stuff, and also they start learning how to argue. That's a very good key point there. They start understanding like if someone says something, they think of their own opinion and they start arguing with that.
Yeah, since they've been developing their own opinion recently. And while they're developing all this stuff in their brain, they're, as I mentioned before, they love to be very active. So in a classroom setting, they do not want to just sit there and watch a movie about how things work and how things grow, like how plants grow. They would rather be out there planting seeds and watching a plant grow. That's why you have projects like that in science class when you're in these age groups. Their memory is also expanding a lot. This is why, like, all of these different things we've been talking about that they're going to be learning during these ages is very crucial because their memory is expanding, so they have more space to fill it up. So that's why, like, learn more language, learn as much language as you can, and learn how things work, and learn all these things about your body and how things are changing in your life.
Yes, and also they at this age they start using a lot of maps and diagrams and graphs and all that good stuff. They start learning like complex like graphs and all that stuff. And at this age they do that a lot of school material stuff.
Alright, now some examples of this. I touched on a few of them, but they're also working in teams because it's very important. They need to learn how to work with people. And the second point, start working independently, but then they go to peers for support. That kind of goes along with the team thing. I also want to mention that at this age, they're separating themselves from their parents more. Like a baby normally clings to their mom and dad, but now they're starting to like, oh, well, maybe I want to go to my friend's house, or I want to go play with my friends, and they're not as attached to their parents, and they're reaching out, and they're getting to know the kids that are their age now.
Yes, and also at this age, they focus shifts more on well they look more at themselves for and their self image. Since they're going through puberty, they start looking at their self image and they start being concerned about their weight and how they look, and all those stuff. At this age, also I would like to mention that people tend to get in eating disorders at this age because they're so focused about their self-image. And this age is you start losing all that fat in your body and they start becoming really skinny and kinky and like long arms and skinny legs.
Yeah. Alright, now to the social and emotional development. This kind of goes along with what we already talked about in cognitive, but there's a few other concepts here, like understanding the value of friendships. They're starting to know a little bit more about, well, why are you my friend, and what's important about you being my friend, and what the difference between that and parents and whatnot. And they're also very interested in, like, why am I a boy and why are you a girl, and what's the difference between us, and why do we look differently, why do I have short hair, why do you have long hair, all these different things. They're learning all these comparisons between the sexes.
And also the conflicts become more verbal than physical at this age. They tend to, instead of throwing a fit like how little kids do at this age, they start fighting more verbally, and saying their opinion about it, and they start being more self-critical about themselves. If they're doing a certain activity or something like that, they look at themselves and be like, well, I didn't really like my work, or I really like my work. They also they have the desire for responsibility and becoming an adult. Basically, they want to be responsible for an activity. They want to be a leader for an activity. They want to do their thing for themselves, And they also like talking greatly. Their talking greatly increases at this age. They start talking a lot at this age. They start asking a lot of questions. They love making conversation at this age, and at this age also they do discover their own selves. They like to find who their friends which friends of group of friends they can fit into. They start looking at who they are as themselves, and all that stuff.
I want to piggyback of what Natalie said about like discovering themselves. She and I were talking when we were doing this project about how we read an article that mentioned the children will discover who they are, and like if they like something, if they don't like something, but it's like the basis of who they are, because even now as we're finishing up our first year in college, we're still discovering who we are and what we like, what we want to do with the rest of our lives and those types of things. But between the ages of 7 and 11, they start to decide, well, maybe I don't like eating peanut butter and jelly, or maybe I absolutely love my mom's lasagna, but your mom's lasagna doesn't taste that great, or whatever it is. They start to like developing their tastes and who they are as a person, and those different opinions that we mentioned. It goes along with that. There's a lot of group discussions that go along with this age. As they're developing their language, they're going to be talking so much because they want to use this language. So they'll start talking to a lot of different people. One important thing is that older people need to encourage their skills, because they're very, very sensitive right now. Because they're developing themselves, they're self-conscious. Like if they make a mistake, they're going to be very upset. I know many kids that get very upset even when they fall down catching a ball and they scrape their knee. So it's very important to encourage that, the skills that they have, so they can continue to build on those skills to achieve something greater later on in life.
Okay, next thing we're going to be talking about is the examples of social and emotional development. They start to have a better control of their emotions, instead of like back then, like they would have like little tantrums, and like they couldn't control their emotions. But now they're able to control their emotions and calm down in the moment, like calm down. They don't throw tantrums anymore, and then also they're really, really, really sensitive to criticism at this age. They really let criticism get to the best of them. And at this age, you really need to like support them, and if they like, for example, if they're doing a sport, like support them, and if they're doing good, if they do bad, still support them, and still give them advice, and because criticism really gets to them at this age, and later on it will affect them later on throughout their lives. They're over dramatized problems. They tend to be over dramatic over things at this age.
Yeah. It's because they're self-conscious. They're going to be like, oh my goodness, exactly. I didn't do well on this. And so they make a big deal out of something really small because they're so self-conscious, and they're going through a lot of different changes in this stage of life. It only gets worse, but this is just the beginning, and they're very scared. Point number 4, they're still a scaredy cat. They're afraid of a lot of different things. They're still getting over being afraid of the dark and being up high or flying, and a variety of different fears that children have. But right now they're also aware of right and wrongs. They're understanding, oh, that's wrong, okay, I probably shouldn't do that. Or, well, some kids are going to be like, well, that's wrong, well, I don't care. They start to understand the differences between right and wrong, good and evil, and whatnot. And they also like to be supported, as we mentioned before. They're very, very sensitive at this age. So support from parents, teachers, and just older siblings is very important in the stages of life. So that's all we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned lots about the ages of 7 through 11-year-olds.